So, so man, like, what was it like for you? I guess growing up, were movies, film, books, that kind of thing always like part of your life, or is there like a pivotal moment that you can remember, like where that was the start of it all?
Movies to me growing up were everything. Like we grew up kind of in Dublin in the suburbs in the 90s, and you only had really two outlets or three outlets that either went scrumping in the orchard that lived near our house, which we did. You played football or you watched films, and yeah, I think like we got our first VHS player early 90s, but again the tapes for them were so like expensive that I don't know if you had this where you live, but we definitely had video shops. But there was a guy that used to come around called the Video Man,
I was
and he
literally, Stephen, just about to ask you that question. Did you have a video man that would drive around the estates in a van?
Yes, we had a Video Man that used to drive around in the States, not in a van, but in his car. And he would open the boot of his car and it'd be like, Home Alone was just out, or Nightmare on Elm Street, or The Thing, or Aliens, and stuff like that. So we used to rent films. But the fun thing was back in that time, as you probably know, was like, you didn't just keep them for a night, you kept them for like a week. So you'd watch the same movie because they were so expensive to not that much to rent, but like you'd watch the same movie like for a week straight. So you're watching Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. You're like, just gonna watch this for a whole week, every night for a week. So yeah, no, movies were everything. I grew up just like kind of watching movies, taping movies off TV, rewatching them constantly, and then as you obviously get older, physical media got a little bit easier to get your hands on. So yeah, and then it's kind of getting into making movies with friends and stuff like that on camcorders. That was kind of how it all started.
Do you feel like that there's obviously, I guess, growing up in that era of like, video shops and the man with the films or the tapes that went around all the estates? Do you feel like that now that we've moved into like a more modern era, there's something maybe lost about that? Like, I don't know, when I think, and maybe it's just that thing that everyone does, like I hear like, parents, grandparents talk about, oh, when I was young, it was so much better this way and that way. But I can't help but feel there's a little bit of the, I don't know, like the allure or magic of film in some ways is lost when things are
Yeah,
dumped, say, to streaming and things. Because like you said, you get a movie, you could get, I don't know, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4 or whatever, Part 5, and if you have it for a week, you will watch it like 7, 8
yeah.
times just because.
I think what's happened now, thanks to streaming and VOD, is that we've so much choice now, and in some ways we've a lot of stuff, not a lot of quality stuff as well, which does not help. You have a lot of access to stuff that what we would have said back in the day is on the bottom shelf of the video store. Which you're like looking at going, I'm not watching that. But what I think what we've lost in the home video kind of phase of our lives is it was an experience. You had to go out, you had to bring your car down to the video shop. You had to kind of look along the movies, and probably the movie that you wanted out that week had sold out. So you'd have to ask, like, on the counter, oh, is there anyone brought the tape back? Like, oh no, I'll check in the box. Which, for other people might know what that is. If you put your videotape back in a box, like a post box, and they'd open it up and check it. I think for me, what is lost, it is that kind of thing that I hope the cinemas never ever go away, is with the videotape. Growing up in the 90s and that stuff, it was like it was an experience. Your mom or your dad or whoever, or your big brother or your big sister would say, let's go rent a movie. And you'd go down and you'd spend time, and you kind of be like that, and like and maybe there's a movie that's out, like I said, and you really want to see her, or to be old movies, so you actually have to put the time and effort into choosing. Where now it's like put on a thumbnail, you see 20 seconds, maybe 5 seconds of what the film, a scene or a bit of a trailer, you just go no. And with Netflix now, obviously, like some of the films even just start, and you're just like no. And I don't know what it is. I think sometimes too much choice can be a bit of a, can kind of lose that magic of like what we started off, movies in the first place. So yeah, it kind of is weird, sad.
Do you think, how do you see then, is there a way, I suppose, going forward that we can like keep some of that magic? Is it maybe cultivating like the cinema space and keeping that like this, I guess, sacred experience? Because I think now I've started to appreciate again maybe the idea of going to, and we'll get into some of the stuff you've worked on, but there's something coming up, in a couple of weeks that's coming out. and it's given me that feeling where I'm like, I cannot wait to see that in the cinema.
I think that's a good point. I think what the point is now is like we have now as a culture and as a generation, as a society, would see a trailer on TV for a movie and you go, "Oh, I'll just wait till that comes out on set one of the 8 million streaming platforms I have," which is kind of a bit of a downer because I do think it. Not that it, not that it's driving audiences away from the cinema. Cinemas, I think, it's thriving still, but there it gives you that option, like it gives you that option of like, day and date, which is like, oh, it's out in theaters, and then four weeks later it's on your TV. It's convenience. Convenience is always one of those things that ruins, I think, the societal get together of watching movies. It's nice. It is nice to sit down at home and watch a film. That is a thing that is really, really good that we have like to a simple touch in this day and age. But like nothing beats going to the cinema. Nothing beats going sitting in a dark room with people. And I think not this year, but last year was stuff like Barbie and Oppenheimer, and specifically for me, Oppenheimer. I could not go see that movie in the cinema. I had to go see that movie in the cinema, and I didn't care it was 3 hours long. It was Christopher Nolan, Cillian Murphy talking about the man who invented the atomic bomb. That had to be seen in the cinema. I think how we get that back is, I think people, and I've talked to a few friends of mine who agree with me on this part, is buy physical media too. Have your streaming platforms, that's great, but you can't be like, I think as well, like, Blu-rays and stuff like that, like they're great things to have. And that's stuff we're missing now on that thing of like getting a Blu-ray and you're like, oh, what special features does it have? It's got director's commentary, it's got writer's commentary, actor's commentary, it's got the making of and stuff like that. Like that's a whole experience in one thing. And yeah, I'd love to see kind of physical media kind of get back on the rise. I think Oppenheimer did. I think that they couldn't make enough of them to get them in the hands of the people. But yeah, I'd like to see physical media make a big comeback, and hopefully it will. I think it's like vinyl. Didn't vinyl make a comeback?
Yeah, yeah, it's true, isn't it? And I definitely do think there is something to be said for that. Like, I've always been a huge physical media collector. On the other side of this room is like uh, a massive bookcase that's like overflowing with movies, and I
Mm,
find that now I'll purposely like maybe buy an updated version of a movie because they have a new director and screenwriter commentary and blah blah. And I seem to sometimes enjoy that more with that attached to it, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
no, that does make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's like a thing now, and people seem to be screaming out for that. And maybe it'll probably someone will figure it out at some point, but the only way you can listen to a lot of those is to have the physical media. It's not like something I can't get it on Spotify or I can't get it on iTunes. I'm sure somebody out there is already probably working on how to just like port all that stuff over. But like as
Yeah,
for right now, it feels like this special experience where I'm like, oh, I'm one of the select few that can listen to this if they took the time to go and buy the movie.
yeah. No, that's it. Like I used to, like I have a massive DVD collection still, and much to my wife's detriment, it has been shifted somewhere at the moment, but it will be unpacked from its boxes. But she couldn't never understand why like I would have three versions of Pulp Fiction. And when I first bought it, it didn't have the special features. Then they brought out the special features version, and I had to buy that. And and then there's another version, the Criterion. It's just it's not a, I don't want to say it's an addiction. If you're a film fan, it's nice to have these things. You know what I mean? It's like yourself, like when your masks behind you there, or your posters. Like I love collecting film stuff because that's what I'm into. You know what I mean? I don't collect stamps, and I don't collect whatever coins from different countries. I collect film stuff, and it's kind of nice to have that. It is, like I said, that's a community.
When you were growing up, then obviously, being such a fan of film and stuff like that. Um, at what point did you, I don't know, maybe start to toy around with the idea of writing stories or anything like that? Was it something you done from an early age?
Yeah, I was never. If you ask anyone who I ever went to school, or anyone in my family, the only two subjects I was really good at school was English and history. They were the only two subjects I was really good. Maths, I was terrible. Well, I'm getting better now, but so I enjoyed creative writing in school. I enjoyed coming up with stories. Um, I loved all that, and I do remember like growing up, like I used to have not a compulsion, but I'd feel like If I was away on holiday somewhere, I'd always buy copybooks for some strange reason and
Mm-hmm.
write little stories or make little notes and stuff like that. And I remember there was a stage I went through where I would copy stories that I'd seen on TV and then present them as if I created them, which I'm sure is a plagiaristic nightmare. But like stuff I'd never heard of, like as an 8-year-old going, "Hey, do you want to hear the story I came up with?" And my grandparents going, "Oh, what's it called?" And like Faust. Like an 8-year-old comes up with Faust. I'd just seen a program about Faust or something, or Ivanhoe on like a kids program that was like the equivalent of Horrible Histories at the time. But I just love stories, and I love books. I love comic books growing up. Obviously love movies. I love television. So again, that kind of compulsion to tell stories, especially from the land of Ireland, is kind of ingrained in you. So no, I've always loved doing it.
And I know we're kind of maybe skipping around the timeline here, but I kind of
Okay.
didn't want to do the, I guess, the generic, just beat by beat questions. But I'm kind of fascinated then. So going from that point then to, uh, how would I phrase this? Like, I'm fascinated by the idea of feeling like that because I feel like I have similar interests and like there's this thing that's always like burning in the back of my mind about certain things and transferring, I guess, that from just being like something I like to do to
Mm.
actually making it serious? Like, how was there a point for you, like, where I don't know, you sat down and went, you know what, I'm gonna write a movie, or I'm gonna write a pretty detailed treatment, or something like that?
I think there was definitely seeds of it growing up, but I think the writing like short films and stuff like that, that was definitely something I did while I was still in secondary school, or maybe high school, I suppose, in America. Um, where I was writing stuff, and then I have a necessity. I had to write a short film and direct a short film to get into film school here in Dublin. So I did that. But the first feature film I ever wrote, which I still remember the title of because it haunts me to this day, um, I wrote after I finished. I said, "Look, I'm gonna actually sit down and write a screenplay, a fully formed one, about 120 pages at the time, because I just had to, because I said I had the story, I have this in my head. I really, really don't know how to do this properly, but I learned by doing, and that's funny because I went to film school, but that's a whole other kettle of fish. Um, and yeah, you kind of like you have to. I think again, if you're asking me if, like, for example, if anyone wants, like, if you're asking me that question, I go sit down and write it, because it's no point of it sitting in your head. You really just have to sit down and write it. And even if it's not great and bad spelling, at least it's something on the page. You know what I mean? And then you can fix that. You know what I mean? And yeah, I think you just get to a certain point where even now to this day, like I sat down this morning and I was like, okay, so what do I have to do? And I'd be just sit down and go, well, I know what I need to do, not what I have to. I need to actually write something. So I sat down and I wrote something, and I haven't looked at it since, because we hopped on this call, and then I'll just look after and say, oh, this is good, this is bad. But yeah, your compulsion to write, it shouldn't be a labor. It should be love. So that was kind of a long-winded way of
Yeah, no,
answering.
no, that was kind of what I was looking for, and I guess a little follow-up question to that then. Um, you know, because I feel like that there's definitely a compulsion there too, right? But I think maybe that daunting feeling of like, I don't know where to or how to compile ideas. Like, for example, I don't know if you like go take a walk or sit in a coffee shop or something like that. Do you have like a notebook or something that you just jot down these little ideas in? I feel like sometimes I'm like in
Yeah.
overdrive to the point where
Well,
I can't like
everyone
zone in.
everyone works differently. Hold on, I think I have one here. Everyone works kind of differently. Like every writer or every writer director or anyone in that thing, in that realm, works differently. Like I started off, like, this is, I can't show you the cover because of the film I'm working at the moment, but this is just like a notebook of and it's random scribbles, like random
Just
notes and stuff, like
ideas.
just
Okay.
ideas or lines of dialogue I hear. Like, the world is full of, like, invention. Like I write down phrases I hear in pubs, in coffee shops, out in the street. If I'm talking to someone, they say a phrase, I think, oh, that's really interesting. Or I'm reading a book and I go, someone has a quote from someone famous. I'll write that down and then I'll do my version of it or stuff like that. But like ideas for films, like get a notebook. That would be my first advice for anyone who's going to write a screenplay. Get a notebook and fill it. Not loads of notebooks. Get one good notebook, and it can be as many pages as you want. But make sure it's a good notebook. Make sure it's not like these rippy pages bullshit. Make sure it's like that's why I use copybooks. I know people say, oh, they're very old school. Copybooks are designed for a reason. They're designed to be filled, and you can write whatever you want in them, fill it up, and then go through it and kind of go, with a red pen or something or a highlighter and go, that's a good idea, that's a good idea, that's a good idea. That's not such a good idea, but maybe I'll use that for something else. And then just fill it up. And then there's that kind of David Lynch thing you can do as well that I kind of sometimes do, which is like get 70 of these cards. I call them no cards.
Yeah.
And just write a scene on them and then put it to a side. And then when you have 70 or so of them, maybe you can have less. You pretty much have a movie. Now, well, I try not to do that. I do a thing. Luckily, you have one handy here. Can't show it to you. I can show you. I can show you what this. But I step it out. So that's 14 pages there, and that's a whole film. Act 1, Part 1, Act 1, Part 2, and I just break open like 15, 12-minute sections, something like that, and then like you're kind of just working through it layer by layer. And but again, the fear of writing should never put you off it.
Mm-hmm.
Forcing you when you're writing your first screenplay that you're not beholden to any deadline. Just sit down and write it. Like the only person you're trying to impress at that point is yourself.
Yeah. And do you find it hard, I guess, to like narrow in on idea? Like, do you ever find like you're overwhelmed with like constant, I don't know whether it's like an overload of information or overload of ideas and stuff like that, like it's hard to switch off?
Yeah, I would suffer from that, and like that could be a thing, and then there could be days where I can come up with nothing. You know what I mean? But what usually happens is I call it the lightning mode, where you get, oh, this is a cool idea, let's run with that, and then more good ideas will come out of it. And I might go somewhere for a walk, like you said, and then I think, oh, great, now I'm going back through all the bits in my head. I go, but what if we turned Part 4 into this? And it can be kind of daunting. And then, like I said, there's days, and I can't tell everyone out there, there's writers that have days where they just go, screw this, I'm just gonna go watch a movie. You know what I mean? Like, because you do focusing on the project you're working on, but sometimes it's just a bit daunting, or not even daunting. I don't want to use that phrase. It's a bit kind of frustrating. That'd be a bit more of a better turn of phrase. And you can kind of get to the point of frustration when you're like, you're not going to solve the problem by staring at your computer screen. You're going to solve the problem by getting away from it and doing something different. And that is a very pivotal part of the process, which is like me and Lee used to call it, we're too close to it. We can't see the wood from the trees. So you do take a break and you go for lunch or something like that, and you come back and you might look at it for a while and go, but move on to another scene or something like that. Move on to another idea. Just make sure you come back to it. That's my advice.
And I suppose just to kind of finish up on that, like the advice part of that, do you or have you found it difficult over the years to, like, obviously, you've got a house, you've got kids, you've got a wife. Is it difficult, I suppose, in that creative space? Because it's very different, I think, from your average like 9 to 5 sort of job. It has it been difficult for you, like, to juggle all that? Or maybe, you're supposed to be, I don't know, at a family event or at a thing, and like you just can't switch off that, like, oh, but what if I do this? Or what if I need to do that, or I need to write down this?
Yeah, no, I'm a devil for like typing down notes on my phone and stuff like that, or remembering a lot. Like someone say a line on a family event, I'm like, I'm gonna put that into a script someday. No, it is difficult. When you're creative in any form of creativity, being a musician, you never switch off. you're just always looking for that kind of inspiration or muse that's going to kick in at some point. And that can be very annoying for other people and can be very annoying for you. But in terms of like, juggling a career and a family, like lots of people do that. It's
Yeah.
I do try to explain to people it can be very exhausting being creative because, like you said, it's not a typical 9 to 5 job. Like you're not going in and there's no disrespect to people who do normal 9 to 5 jobs. I've done a few of them in my time. They're hard to do. But you're literally going, I have a world that I'm building in my head, and there's a part of that world that's the jigsaw is not fitting, and I can't figure it out. It's not like you can run the numbers again. It's not like you
Yeah.
can just, oh well, I'm a butcher and there's no mince out. You can put mince out, like that's fine if you have them. But no, it can be very draining and it can be very tiring. But look, we're very lucky to do what we do, so I don't want to complain about it.
And how many different scripts, ideas, whatever, would you typically kick around at one time? Like, is it a case of having to, like, I know you mentioned there a few times that you're working on certain things now. Is it a case where, I don't know, you have to zone in on like maybe one or two projects in particular?
Yeah. Well, I have a few. I have a few that are moving in different directions and in different paces. Like there's some stuff now that I'm working on that we're in early development with, and we're talking about them. There's scripts I know I have to do another pass on, another rewrite. There's a book I have to adapt that I have to start screenplay on. So you're kind of juggling, but what you do is you kind of just focus your time on the ones that are, you know, you're going to get deadlines, so you have to be beholden to deadlines. So like they take priority, but you're kind of constantly thinking about them all the time. But you do focusing on the ones you're working, like the one I just showed you, the kind of step by step on. It's an adaptation of a book. So then I'm reading the book and I'm highlighting chapter, and there's a different process for it. But that's now, as far as I'm concerned, like that's ready to go. Me start writing the script, which I probably won't take as long as having to read the book and taking notes and doing the step by step, because I have such a tight kind of a story there, and I know what the scenes are, and then that's all going to change. Not might, it will. That will all change going into the script, but yeah, you gotta, you have focus and then, but you do also need to not be working on one. I always say to people, don't work on one thing for like a too long of a time, because you'll be disappointed if it doesn't go anywhere. Have different plates spinning if you have the capacity to do that, because it'll be very good for you. And you never know what the next movie is going to be. We always say that you never know what the next one's going to be.
That's something that like I find fascinating, because as I suppose part of the audience, and maybe people who were a bit more tuned into like certain genres or whatever might understand, but your average like cinema goer or movie watcher that watches movies on the weekend or when they're off work or whatever, I don't think will understand. It's not a case of like, okay, so Steven's writer, uh, write this movie for me, and then you finish that, and then it's like, okay, start another movie. It's like you could have like 15, 20 things all in different stages of things
Yeah,
all at once, and you kind of have to keep circling all those
yeah.
things.
Yeah, and then there's other stuff that happens as well. It's like you could pitch like a writing assignment. You're like, oh, like I really want to work on this idea, and someone else, and you pitch it to you're pitching to a producer why you should do it. Then you get that, and then that's on your plate as well. So you keep building them. These are kind of um, good bad things to have. But yeah, no, it's the film you see in the cinema or on your TV or wherever you watch your films. It's been a long and different process and different stages and stuff like that. So yeah, no, don't be focusing on the one thing the whole time. Keep the irons, many irons and many fires, and you never know who you're going to be working with. Or look, it is what it is.
Um, is that a skill in itself? The idea of pitching your take or your treatment or your script or whatever.
Yeah, I do believe it is. I do believe pitching is, and I think there's one of these things. I would love to go into film schools, especially in Ireland, and revamp screenwriting classes, because not that the people who teach them are bad, but they don't. For me, they don't teach you what happens in the real world of the industry. And when you're pitching, I was never taught about pitching really in film school. You went in at the end of your year when you were doing your student film, and you just hand over your script, and your script was read, and if they liked it, that was the film they were going to make that year. But I started out, for example, as I didn't think I was going to be a writer. I want to be a director of photography. I love, my heroes were DPs, and I always thought, well, if you become a DP, it's a quick step into direction after that, which obviously right can be as well. But like, you'd have to pitch, and I'd be like going, I don't know how to do this. So I do believe pitching is a skill. I believe it's a necessity for anybody who wants to be in the business, no matter what department you're in. And I think it should be taught in film school. I think there should be a whole class dedicated to it, to be honest with you. But it
Yeah,
is a
and
skill
a
set.
few different people have said that to me, like that it's really understated, like how daunting that can be. Maybe if you get that bit of a, I suppose, for want of a better word, like big break, where maybe you're sitting in a Blumhouse meeting room or Universal or Sony or Screen Gems or wherever, and like all of a sudden they're like, there's 4 or 5 different executives like, okay, hit me with it, and you're just kind of there going, oh well, shit,
Yeah.
I'm really passionate about this, but you've kind of caught me off guard.
I think as well, it's people's personalities are different. You know what I mean? Like, people's personalities are definitely different, and it's no different from any industry. You have shy people, you have people with bravado, you have people that are kind of in between, maybe. But my advice for anyone who is starting off doing that is research who you're pitching to, and make sure you have your pitch well learned, and prepare yourself for questions afterwards. Like, I think I'm lucky as well, because I came from comedy a couple of years ago, working in comedy, that I have that kind of thing where I can kind of improv as well. Because
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you're in comedy domain, you're pitching like 100 jokes. You know what I mean? You have to be ready. So, but be prepared is probably the best advice I could give.
And would you say being, I suppose, like super into whatever it is that you're pitching, like you strike me as somebody, if you're really getting behind an idea, you're really getting behind it. It's not just for the sake of like, oh well, I think they might like my take on Texas Chainsaw, and that'll get me. Like, because I've definitely heard stories like that, and even people have been quite candid with me behind the scenes and said, look, I kind of I got an offer to sit down to get attached to such and such an IP. Didn't really
Yeah.
give a shit about it, but I just kind of went along with it to try and get myself back.
Yeah.
And it just
Well,
ultimately like failed and fell apart just because there was no real passion.
I think it can be a double-edged sword. I think people who are very passionate about the thing they're pitching, and if they get it, that could be detrimental as well, because again, they're so close and they are fans of it and stuff like that, and they could go into it thinking, I'm gonna make the best version of this thing that I really love, and then you have to play, not play the game, but you have to kind of realize that there's other people going to have their opinions. If you're a writer and you write the best, and you're really into, say for example, a computer game, and you write that, and then a director's going to and going, that's great, but like this is like a great fan film, but we need to make a really good film for the fans. That's two separate things. And then, like you said, the other side of it, if people are doing it and they're not, like, you're like, oh my, not a bad thing either. I don't necessarily think these can be all. Look, there's times things don't work out, that is a given, but like, if you're like, oh, I'm not the biggest Nightmare on Elm Street fan. Oh no, and that's not me saying that, I'm just using that as an example, because
Yeah.
I am a Nightmare on Elm Street fan. Is and you like, and you go into it like, we're thinking about making a Nightmare on Elm Street. They're like, what's your thoughts on Freddy Krueger? And you don't know who Freddy Krueger is. Maybe shouldn't be your gig. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but no, passion is a good thing, and being a fan of stuff is a good thing, but it has its pros and it has its cons.
Is there, I suppose, I don't know how much you want to like reveal or whatever, but is there any particular like IPs or characters that stick out to you that you might have either an interest in, or that would maybe one over the other be like, that's the one I'd really like to?
That's a kind of not a loaded question, because there's so many I would love to, and I'm just a fan of films. I'm a massive fan of The Thing by John Carpenter.
Yeah, yeah.
And and I do have in me a story that I think would, and I know people are going to go crazy if I say this, that would be a very interesting sequel. But
Interesting.
I've never had the conversation or the opportunity to have said conversation with the people who control that. But and I'd be very, very clear that if I ever was to, that I would ask John Carpenter's, at least his permission and his blessing. But like no, like I love stuff like that. And then just again, like we were saying a little bit, we were talking before we came on air, just stuff I wouldn't touch and I'd have no interest in going
Mhm.
near. But no, there is stuff I love, and I think you have to be very careful when you're rebooting or remaking. And I think, or you know, adding sequels to, it's a tightrope you're walking. But you know, at the end of the day, you're just doing what you want to do, what you'd like to do, which is make a really good movie.
What do you think about the idea of, we see like, say, like the most recent Halloween movies came out, and now they're kind of in that weird period where obviously, I don't think Michael Myers is ever gonna go away ever. But it's like they're kind of in that weird phase, I think, where they were like, okay, do we make another movie? Do we make another like do we make a sequel to some of the previous ones, like, and try and continue like the Jamie Lloyd storyline? Or now I see there's like pretty, I don't know, serious talks, I suppose, about some sort of a Halloween TV series. How do you
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
about that when they bring it to like, so like say for example with Chucky, like Chucky went to TV and seems to have been quite successful for as goofy as it's been.
Um, do you know what? I think with these characters, especially in horror, there's a lot. The sandbox is very big, and people love that, and people love going to the same sandbox again, and they love going and seeing what's new with the characters or the continuation of the characters. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I know people can find it tiresome sometimes, like, oh, they're making another like Halloween, and then but there's the other side of the fan base who are like, I can't wait to see what they do next. So
Yeah.
you can't please everybody. That's the thing. We all know that you can't please the few and please the many at the same time. You just but I think look, if you were going to do another Halloween movie, and they were like, "Are we going to do a continuation? Are we going to do TV series?" I think the intrigue would bring me there. Might not bring every fan there, but I think again, like these characters, people have seen them as much as many other people don't want to see any more of them or don't want to see them, as they say, you know, in their opinion, you know, made worse, which I don't think, you know, is fair. Everyone's just trying to tell their version of the story with their character. But again, without being long winded about it, I don't know until I see it. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I can't really give an opinion. Like Michael Myers, I think the whole idea of Michael Myers that he never goes away is the idea of Michael Myers anyway. So
Yeah, 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 it kind of ties in. Like obviously you mentioned you're quite close with Lee Cronin and things like that. Um, and I'm sort of fascinated by this, I guess, because as somebody who has been a fan of film for so long, like yourself, and then to
hmm.
be, to be in these rooms having these conversations about, what a lot of us would consider these like massive, like global movies that are
Hmm.
potentially going to be made, and to have your name right there at like the top of the bill for a lot of that stuff and the ideas and stories behind it. Like, do you guys ever, I don't know, have coffee or go for a few pints or something and just be like, fucking hell, this has been like, this is mad, isn't it? Like from years ago to, renting the the tapes from the Video Man or whatever to now you're writing those movies that other people are scrambling to see.
we Yeah, we do have that conversation, and me and Lee, as I said, we did our first film together, and obviously we've gone off to do different projects now in the past couple of years since then, and we're going to come back together at some point and do maybe a few more. We're definitely doing another one together, I know that for sure. But yeah, we do have that conversation. Like we do laugh about like where we were and where we are now, but the thing doesn't go away. We're both still massive fans of cinema, and we're both massive fans of what we're, the projects that are coming our way. Or obviously for the Evil Dead is a great movie. What he did, he is a massive fan of Evil Dead, as am I. But it's yeah, it is strange, I suppose. But look, if you're passionate and you have the persistence and the ambition and the drive to do these things, then I'm not surprised, because Lee is a very talented filmmaker. He has done he started off making short movies and working in adverts, and we made The Hole in the Ground, and then now we're here with Evil Dead, and then Abigail on my end. We just love what we do, and I think we have the love for it, so it does make it better. But we do laugh when we meet up for coffee, or mainly a pint, and laugh about how you never know you were going to get here, that kind of point. But
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
very grateful that we did.
It's funny, like, yeah, because a lot of people have said that to me. It's like I couldn't have ever envisioned myself doing anything else and never wanted to do anything else, but then also
Yeah.
at the same time never envisioning actually doing it or being able to do it.
I think it's a vocation. I definitely think it's a vocation. I definitely think if you don't go into it wanting to succeed, I think it's like anything. If you don't go into something like this and don't want to succeed, then why bother doing it at all? It's like being a professional footballer. Like, if you're not going to be playing in the upper echelons of football, like, yeah, you can make a living, but every footballer as a kid starts out wanting to be in the Premier League,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
Serie A or something like that. So you want to be at the top of your game. But yeah, no, I can't imagine doing anything else. I can't imagine not making stories, and I think it's just something that you're born to do.
Does the imposter syndrome ever completely go away, or is that something that like you find you still have a little bit of, where it's like, Jesus, like at some stage someone's going to figure me out here?
I think everyone kind of has that. I think if they don't, they're kind of lying. I think you do get to a point where you're like, God, I have written a film that has gotten made, is the big one where you're like, oh, I've written a film that's gotten made and people will see it in cinemas, and hopefully in their droves. But yeah, no, sometimes you're just like going, like, I get to sit in I have my office. I'm sitting in my office now. That's at the side of my house, and I'm just like going, I get to sit at home and write stories that, fingers crossed, someday will be on the big screen or on television. So yeah, no, I don't think the imposter syndrome really goes away.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's not a bad thing to have, though. Keeps might keep you humble a little bit.
That like what you just said there is kind of like winning the lottery for most people. The idea of being able to do something that you love every day like that.
Yeah, no, it is. It's that quote, isn't it? If you do something, if you work at something you love, you never work a day in your life. So, but you do work.
Yeah, yeah,
Something you work.
yeah. Yeah, it's that thing. Look, I hear it so many times. Like people say, "Oh yeah, the 10-year overnight success." People will probably
Yeah,
talk to you now, and it's like, "Oh wow, you're getting all these big breaks. It's great." And it's like, yeah, but I've been at the grindstone for a long,
yeah.
long time. A lot of ideas, a lot of stories that never went anywhere. A lot of hard work.
100%, man. Like, success happening overnight is a very rare thing. It does happen, but no, like, this is years of working on television, working on sketch shows, working on radio shows, and then like having a part-time job while you're doing that as well, because it doesn't pay too much here in this country. And no, it's a dream come true. I can't really give out in any way, shape, or form of it.
I know now you're on the cusp, I think, of going to the States. For I'm assuming it's the Overlook Film Festival.
Oh, I'm not going to the Overlook. Chad, Matt, and Tyler are going to the Overlook. I'm going to the LA premiere of the film in 2 weeks,
Okay,
so
so
that
it's
should be
even
fun.
bigger again. So like sitting here now, you're still at home in Dublin. I
Mm.
guess on the cusp of flying to the States to premiere Abigail. How do you feel going into that now? Like, after obviously what you've put into it up to this point, and now it's like right at the point where the world gets to see this thing. And I feel like there's a lot of noise being made online. I don't know how much attention you pay to some of that stuff, but like there is obviously a lot of marketing push behind this movie, and it feels like it's getting one of those big like cinematic horror kind of like, you need to come out to the movies with your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever it is, and go and see this thing.
Um, to be honest with you, I'm just taking it day by day, because yeah, the marketing has been great, and Universal have done a great job on doing it. But what I'm more proud of is that the film is really good. Matt and Tyler did a great job. You know, Guy came in and done some writing on the script that I'd initially written, and you know that's been a very pleasant experience as well. And I'm just more happy that a horror film is kind of being promoted the way it is, because you know yourself, sometimes horror films or that kind of thing is like, oh, we got this big movie coming out, and then there's a horror movie coming out the same day, and don't worry about it. Like this is the horror movie that is coming out that day, and it's big, it's bloody, it's bloody, it's very bloody, very sweary, and it's very fun. So like I'm just glad that you know, that people are kind of getting to see the film being promoted well, and I just hope to go into the cinema and see it now on April 19th.
And from the original concept, then, how long has that idea, I suppose, been kicking around? Or where, obviously, I know we have to be kind of careful about how much is said or not said. But like, where does an idea like that even come from?
An idea of that like that came from an 11-hour flight to Los Angeles. That's where the idea came from. After the Sundance Film Festival in 2019, where Hole in the Ground premiered, I went back out to LA to do what they call generals, and just meet kind of different producers, different studios. And I was sitting on the plane for 11 hours, and I had this idea in my head. I'm a massive fan of 1970s cinema. And I love heist movies from that time. I think they're great. And I was like, I'd love to do a heist movie mixed with a horror movie. So I just kind of started formulating this idea about someone that gets kidnapped and they're not who they appear to be, and the paranoia between the kidnappers, and that's what I love about kind of 70s film. 70s movies has really, really, really great paranoia stuff going on in it, even more so than the kind of 50s and 60s. This was like proper the parallax view and stuff like that. And I don't know if 3 Days to Condor was out in the 70s, but I love that movie too. I love the paranoia kind of stuff. And so I kind of just married a horror and a heist movie together. And then when I got to Los Angeles, I pitched it to Universal, and they really liked it. And then didn't hear anything for a while. And then they were like, could we talk about that idea again? And
so
the
not
balls
to cut you off there, but you're on a flight
yes
to LA, right? And this
yes.
idea, that's the first time you've kind of really started to like bring this idea together. Are you writing this down, or are you just landing in LA and going in and pitching this thing kind of all?
To be honest with you now, like what I do is I have a list of ideas on my laptop of like, oh, I'd love to just like little things like I'd love to do a film in this space, I'd love to do a film in this space, and there might be just a one word thing like vampire. Like I love vampire movies. Of course, I want to do a vampire movie, but it's that thing you were asking me earlier. It's like, when does ideas spark? You don't know when ideas are going to spark. So when you're kind of on a flight for 11 hours and you're watching movies, and you're getting served meals, and then you're trying to sleep and you can't, your brain starts going, oh, that idea I was thinking about it 2 years ago, that would be really interesting. But the idea of the film, of like what it was, and kind of the kind of simple plot of it, was just kind of formulating in my head. And I was just kind of like, oh, I'm gonna write down notes, and that could be interesting to get out the laptop for an hour and write it down and go, oh, this could be really interesting. And it kind of just evolved over an 11-hour flight. But look, I was going there with other ideas as well. I was just like, oh, this one's kind of really cool though. And when you kind of get excited about an idea, your body starts to do an involuntary thing where you just like starts getting excited for, you're like just you're nearly just gonna go, oh, this is actually really good, and maybe instead of the three ones that I had prepared going into meetings, I should pitch this one. But you never know what's going to come out of your mouth until you're sitting in a room talking to an executive.
And so you pitch that to them, and then you go back, and they come back and contact you and say, like, can we talk about this again?
Yeah, basically, it was actually supposed to. So it was more like I kind of gave them the true line of the pitch in the room and at Universal. Then I went home to Ireland, and then we had our first child the night I was supposed to pitch it again, kind of a more fully formed pitch. So that had to wait. And then a week later, I finally sat down with Holly and Jay in Universal and pitched what my idea for the story would be. And I think they liked it.
It's just so wild to me to think that like something like this came from your mind while you're sitting on a flight. It's such, and like, now I don't mean that in like, I don't know if that sounds like negative or ignorant, but it's so wild that like that little kernel of an idea can just expand and expand and expand and expand, and then eventually it comes to fruition where, like, we're what, 2 weeks out or whatever from
Yeah.
what feels like quite a big launch for like a proper, like, fun, scary, exciting horror movie.
I find that most things, like most movies, are people read an article, or they read a book, or they're just like talking to a friend and they tell them this crazy story. Like, most people who are filmmakers just go, that would make a good movie. And it's just about kind of that process of like, okay, I know what the core idea is, and then I have to flesh that out. Like, I would love to have been in the room when Beckham Woods came up with A Quiet Place. You know what I mean? Like that's such a simple idea. It's monsters that if they hear you, they will kill you. Like, and I read the screenplay for that movie, and it's amazing, and it is as it should be. And it's just, you're going, but that's the thing. You're kind of sitting. I still do, even though I'm a screenwriter. I still, when I'm seeing like a trailer for a movie and it's like something, you're just like, never thought of that. Like someone sat down and was like going, what if this thing happened? You're like going, and you kind of feel annoyed in a way because you're like, why didn't I think of that? You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah,
how
yeah.
most ideas are born into the world. It's just like it's nearly like you're not even trying to think of an idea. It's just something hits you.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And for people listening then who obviously, are waiting to be able to see this thing in a couple of days, this will probably release right around a day or two beforehand.
Yeah.
What I suppose from the man's mind who this whole idea came from, what is, I suppose, your version of what this story is about?
As in what
Yeah,
it
as in
what
like yeah, as in like the plot or whatever. I know we get like the kind of, you'll see people will post, I suppose, their interpretation of the plot, and it's very generic, just about
oh
like
you
in
oh
your
sorry, yeah, I know what you mean. No,
yeah,
well,
like in your words, like what can people expect, I suppose, from Abigail?
they can expect a group of people making a wrong decision, which is about a group of kidnappers who steal a little girl from a very wealthy man, and soon come to realize that the little girl is not to be trifled with. And then from then on in, it's just laughs, blood, fun. Again, like I said, more blood and sharp teeth. It's
I've
just,
I've seen the blood thing mentioned quite a bit, actually, and I had seen some of the guys talk about the idea of how Abigail looks, and like not having, I suppose, what you would associate with your generic, like, average vampire fangs.
yeah, yeah.
Was that something that you had envisioned, like, yourself? Like, is a lot of the, I suppose, how you fleshed out the story, is that how it ended up looking?
Yeah. Well, regards to the teeth, I think that was more of a Matt and Tyler call. My version of it when I was writing the script was definitely up for. I do think there was a line that it was more like a shark than it was a. No, I could be wrong, or it's been a while since I read the script. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, decisions like that come from Matt and Tyler, and I think they just wanted to see a different aesthetic to the kind of vampire fangs. Like, oh, if you ever watch vampire movies, I do think that directors and writers and maybe actors, I'd say as well, there's different interpretation of the fangs over. Like, I remember watching Fright Night. I think when you go back and watch that film, the fangs are like really elongated, and Chris Sarandon looks fucking amazing in that movie. So I think it's just like, there's nothing really scary about like human teeth fangs, I suppose. Like, do we kind of get the idea of that behind Dracula and stuff like that? But you know, and to go back to your thing about the blood, yeah, the guys like blood.
There's something, is it difficult? I don't know how much you know about, like, that aspects of it or whatever from writing the story, but um like, this seems like it's gonna be quite a, like, gory, bloody, like, real fun, like, what horror fans want, I think, and what the mainstream audience want as well. I think there's a lot of people that wouldn't class themselves as horror fans that love seeing movies like this looks like it's gonna be. Um, is that difficult nowadays then with I mean, even in the script writing stage, where it's like, "Oh, Jesus, is Universal gonna want to release it like this? Is it gonna have to be toned down? Is everything gonna have to be, like, real PG and kind of for everybody?
Yeah, I suppose to answer your question, the best way I can answer that question is like when you hire guys like Matt and Tyler, and you've seen Ready or Not, and you've seen the two Scream movies that they've done,
Yeah.
you kind of know what you're getting. You know what I mean? And that's a credit to them. They have a style and a constant style that adds to these movies that they make. And I have to say they both love the process of making movies, and they bring a real fun aspect to it, not just to the making of the movie, which I can attest to from the Irish crew here and the actors. They just love making entertaining movies, which is I think it's a very rare thing these days. Is movies are just set out to entertain.
And so when obviously Universal say to you, like, this is something we want to move forward, and we say move forward to the point where we're location scouting or things like that, like, how involved are you on a project like that then? Is it just completely hands off onto the next thing, or do you get, like, I don't want to say like a vote or a decision, but like obviously a lot of people don't know the movie was filmed predominantly here, right?
It was filmed all here.
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah, all over
Um,
here. Yeah, that's just
you know,
coincidental. It was nothing to do with me.
no, but I mean in the sense of like, are you kind of looped in on like, well, what do you think of this? Or we're looking at this location. Is that what you envisioned? Or like even Alicia playing Abigail and stuff like that.
Mm,
Um, are those
never
things
thought.
like that you're like in the room for or on a Zoom call for?
No, 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 no. That's completely up to them guys. Like that's up to the producers, and that's up to Matt and Tyler. Like at the end of the day, they're directing the film, and it's their interpretation of what's on the page. So, like, I remember when I finally met Matt, Tyler, and William Sharp, the producer, and Guy in Dublin we went all out for dinner, and we were just having a talk, and they were like, I think cast, I don't think was primarily set at that point. I think they were still negotiating stuff. And during the conversation, and I think maybe it's Matt or Guy says, oh no, it was Matt. Matt goes, we're thinking, and I'm like, Alicia Weir that lives like 20 minutes down the road from you, who played Matilda. And she's like, yeah. And I was like, kind of going, actually, that's a genius. That's a genius move, because one, Alicia is a great actress. Two, it's so good to go from such a, like, that Matilda is such an iconic Roald Dahl kids character, to come in and playing a killer vampire. You're just going, yeah. And even Alicia herself, like I saw her a couple of weeks ago, she was like, yeah, I just wanted to play a vampire. You know what I mean? And you're like, oh yeah, no. But as regards to decisions now, that's Matt Tyler and the producers. But again, as I said, they're making the movies. My job's kind of hands off by that.
Obviously, without saying too much, because I'm assuming there's probably been some conversations, maybe potentially. When just from the outside looking in, I think when I look at Abigail, I start to think of things like, not to liken it to it, but I think of something like, say, Megan, which seemed to taken the world by storm there at one point.
Yeah.
And I feel like Abigail kind of has that look straight off the bat without even knowing much of the backstory or the lore or anything like that. Just the look of the character alone, I feel like has potential to maybe have an expanded universe, as in maybe sequels, prequels, stuff like that. Is
Yeah.
that something that you ever considered going into it, or is that something that you could potentially see maybe?
Sequels or prequels?
Yeah.
I think anything in the film business, there's always room for prequels and sequels. I think the character of Abigail is one of those characters where you could have more fun with. Of course, yeah, you could see what she does after this movie, or you could see what she does, what she has been doing before the movie. I think there's a whole universe there for her to play in, so it could be really interesting. And yeah, look, I think definitely there is, but
I have a couple of final little quick fire questions before I let you go. Do you have any comfort horror movies, like ones you find yourself putting on more often than others?
comfort horror movies. Oh, 100%. So I don't know if Jaws would count. I think it's scary, but horror, like pure horror movies, oh, 100%. The Lost Boys is definitely one I put on a good bit. The Thing, as I mentioned, I think is one of my definitely and that comes on TV. I'm not doing anything for the rest of the evening. Um, Nightmare on Elm Street is definitely the original. Actually, I love most of the Nightmare on Elm Street, so I will sit down and watch most of them. Current ones as well, like the Conjuring movies. I love them. Insidious. Definitely would sit down and watch the first and second Insidious. I don't think I've actually seen the rest of them. No, I've seen the last game. From
We cut out there, I think, for a sec.
it just did a spinny thing, yeah. Can
Are we back?
you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you again now.
Yeah, great. I don't know where it cut off though.
Yeah, no, just on the topic of like comfort movies, so things like The Thing, The Lost Boys, and stuff like that are big ones for you, yeah.
Yeah, I think Last Boy, as I was saying, like Halloween. I don't think I mentioned that the last time. Yeah, just most horror movies I will sit down and watch. You know, like I said, The Conjuring, Insidious, the original Amityville Horror. I love all. I just sit there, like even like Strange was like, I think it's The House in Sorority Row and stuff like that.
Is there? I know you mentioned Jaws being something that you're like super into, like one of your favorite movies, right?
My favorite movie, full stop. I'd never say it's not.
So, let's say like you have a conversation and there's an idea that we want to like. I don't even know if I want to call it like remake or like modernize the idea of Jaws or whatever. And they're like, look, would you take a stab at it? Is that difficult for you, obviously, as somebody who has such respect for, I guess, the craft of filmmaking overall? And then, you know, like you said, off air, we had conversations about sometimes there's just certain things that probably shouldn't be touched. Would that
Mm.
be a difficult position for you to be in where it's like, this is this thing I adored, but also like, is there a part of you that's like, oh, geez, I would kind of love to be able to say, like, and have that on my mantle of like, you know, I made a Jaws movie?
No,
Straight up.
no, straight up no, especially with Jaws, because to me, Jaws is the perfect movie, and not just because of the behind the scenes legacy of it, of how it was made, and Spielberg getting it done, and all the trials and tribulations he had to go through. Jaws is the perfect movie. It's just, as I said, like you said before we came on air, there's certain movies I know in my mind that even if I was offered millions, I couldn't because it's just, and I know they tried, and I know there's sequels to it, and there's sequels in 3D, and there's sequels with Michael Caine, but like Jaws is the gold standard as far as I'm concerned, so don't touch it.
So going forward now, you know, Abigail comes out and stuff. So right now, then you're already on like the next several projects, I guess. Then is it a case of like pitching things, or is there, again? I know we can't announce or say anything in specific, but is there anything like that's been given a green light, like behind the scenes for you, that you're actively like, this is the next thing?
No, not there's nothing being given the definitive green light. There's projects that I pitched on and I'm working on, and there's more pitching to be done. But at the moment, no. It's like anything. I'm just kind of concentrating on getting my part of the job done, and then the process kind of begins all over again. So, but it's been fun. The stuff I'm working on, I really love, both television and film, and I'm looking forward to doing more stuff as well and seeing what comes down the pipeline. But no, there's nothing really that I'm like, we're ready to go.
Dude, obviously with Abigail being filmed here, did you get a chance to take anything from the set or have any cool props or anything like that?
No, no. Unfortunately, the writer's strike was on, and and then the actor strike happened. So it was a bit of a kind of, bit of not like a great time to visit or anything like that. So it was kind of just, you know, it was a weird time in the business. But no, I didn't, no, didn't get the chance to steal anything.
Was there ever just to touch on that before we leave it, like was there ever a worry there about like this messing up the movie coming out and stuff? Because it's really weird, right, that it all went on during that, and then obviously it was in Ireland, and you would feel like that those are all things that technically should have made this really hard to get done, but it doesn't seem to have stopped the momentum at all. And like it just from the outside looking in, it feels like that none of this has missed a beat.
Not that I was aware of, and I'm not too sure. So I'm sure there was a few worries during the strikes that everyone was trying to get different things finished. But as far as I'm concerned, it was getting done come out of high water.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the time, Stephen. For everybody listening, the links to all the Stephen stuff will be down below in the description. And we're hoping to, if your time obviously allows, maybe once the movie is out, revisit and do maybe a 30-minute episode, just kind of talking about everything we can talk about at that point. I would love to do it right now, but obviously I'm conscious we're still, what, two weeks out from the actual
Yeah.
general release. So, yeah, like I
No,
said, I appreciate your time.
I'll definitely come back on and we can have a proper chat about all things horror and Abigail as well.
100%. Like I said, I appreciate the time. Enjoy your time in the States. I hope it all goes well. We'll
Thank
keep in
you.
touch. And yeah, like I said, for everybody listening, the links to all the Stephen stuff will be down below in the description. And make sure you check out Abigail on April 19th.
Do.